They thought it was just a harmless 3 a.m. challenge, until the mirror answered back.
There was someone else in the reflection. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there.
At the stroke of 3, the reflection began to move on its own.
Have you ever stared into a mirror at 3 a.m. and felt like something was staring back? They said it was just an online challenge, but what they unleashed that night was far more real than a dare. If you've ever looked into a mirror after midnight, this story will haunt you. It started as a harmless dare. 3 friends, Lena, Chris and Mariah, were sitting in Lena's dimly lit bedroom on a Friday night, the glow from a single candle flickering between them. They had been scrolling through scary TikToks and horror challenges when Chris came across a video titled, "Never Look into the Mirror at 3 a.m. The thumbnail showed a cracked mirror and a shadowy figure standing behind a girl with hollow eyes. "It's fake," Chris laughed, "some creep using filters." But Mariah wasn't so sure. "Every culture has mirror legends," she whispered. "They say mirrors are portals to the other side. What if this one actually works?" Lena rolled her eyes but felt a shiver crawl down her spine anyway. By 2:45 a.m., they were restless. The air outside was still, almost heavy, and the candle's flame kept flickering as though disturbed by invisible breath. "Let's just do it," Chris said, smirking. "It's a stupid internet trend. We'll prove it's nothing." Lena hesitated, but she didn't want to seem scared. "Fine," she said, "but if something weird happens, you're sleeping here tonight." The 3 of them stood in front of the old vanity mirror in Lena's room. It had belonged to her grandmother, carved wood, slightly cracked at one corner, with a tarnished silver frame. The mirror always seemed to reflect the room, just a bit darker than it really was. At exactly 3 a.m., Chris said the words the video had mentioned, "Show me what's hidden." They expected nothing. For a few seconds, all was quiet, except for the faint sound of the ticking wall clock. Then, the candle flickered violently, and the reflection behind them rippled like disturbed water. Lena gasped, clutching Chris's arm. "It's just the air," he muttered, though his voice trembled. The reflection seemed to grow darker, and the faint outline of a 4th figure appeared behind them, a tall, shadowy shape with long, crooked arms. "Okay, that's not funny," Mariah said, backing away. Chris turned around, but there was nothing there. Only when he looked back into the mirror did the figure move closer. The air grew icy, and the candle went out. Panic filled the room. Lena fumbled for her phone, turning on the flashlight. "Stop, stop, stop," she whispered. "This isn't funny anymore." The mirror's surface shimmered again, and they heard a faint whisper, 3 slow words that sounded like they came from inside the glass. "Don't look away." Mariah screamed, stumbling backward, her phone clattering to the ground. The whispering grew louder, now layered with faint laughter. Lena's reflection wasn't moving in sync anymore. It smiled when she wasn't. Chris tried to cover the mirror with a blanket, but when the cloth touched the surface, it was sucked flat against it, as though the mirror had inhaled. The sound of something crawling echoed from within the glass, slow, deliberate scraping, like nails dragging against the inside of the frame. "We're leaving," Lena said, grabbing the door handle, but it wouldn't turn. The lights in the hallway flickered, and the temperature dropped even lower. "The mirror's just a trick," Chris whispered, though his eyes darted to his reflection. "Just glass. It can't do anything." He reached out to touch it. Mariah screamed, "Don't!" But too late. His hand sank an inch into the surface, like it was thick liquid. He yanked it back, trembling. His fingertips were pale and icy, as though frostbitten. "Something's inside it," he whispered. Then, a deep thud shook the room from within the mirror. The glass cracked, and from the fractures, black smoke began to seep out, curling and twisting like tendrils. A faint face pressed against the inside, its eyes pure white, its mouth open far too wide. "It's copying us," Mariah cried. The creature's reflection mirrored her exact movements, but with a delay, like a predator learning its prey's rhythm. Chris backed away, his phone camera shaking as he recorded. "This will go viral," he muttered in panic. But when he checked the screen, his camera showed only himself, alone in the reflection. No Lena, no Mariah. Lena turned to the mirror and froze. Her reflection was gone. The space where she should have been showed only the dark, empty room behind her, except for a faint, shadowy figure standing where she would be. "It's me," she whispered. The reflection stepped closer to the glass, mimicking her movements perfectly. Then it smiled, slowly, unnaturally. "That's not you," Mariah said, trembling. Lena's reflection raised its hand and pointed straight at her, and suddenly, the real Lena's nose began to bleed. She stumbled backward, clutching her face. "Make it stop," she cried. Chris threw the candle holder at the mirror. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the room, but the mirror didn't break. The object passed through it, disappearing inside. The whispering turned into screams, hundreds of overlapping voices crying out from the mirror's surface. The reflection's eyes turned completely black, and one by one, the lights in the house went out until only the faint glow from the moon remained. Mariah clutched Lena's arm. "We have to close it," she said. "The video said you have to say its name." "It doesn't have a name," Lena shouted, but then she realized the video they watched had cut off right before the name was mentioned. "What if it's waiting for us to finish?" she whispered. Chris, pale and trembling, whispered into the darkness, "Show me what's hidden." Again, this time the mirror responded immediately. A hand, grey and thin, reached out from the glass, gripping his wrist. He screamed as it pulled him forward. Lena and Mariah grabbed him, pulling with all their strength, but the mirror was stronger. His face was halfway through when his scream turned into a muffled echo, like he was shouting from underwater. In seconds, he was gone. The mirror's surface went still, and his reflection remained, trapped, pounding silently against the inside. Lena collapsed to the floor, sobbing, "We have to go. Now!" But as they turned toward the door, they heard Chris's voice, soft and distorted, coming from behind them. "Don't look away!" Mariah screamed and bolted toward the door, but when she opened it, she didn't see the hallway, only darkness stretching endlessly forward. A faint reflection of herself stared back, like she was inside the mirror now. "Lena!" she cried, but her voice echoed from within the glass. Lena turned, seeing Mariah's body vanish, sucked into the surface like a ripple fading in water. Only Lena was left. The mirror's surface pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. "You wanted to see," a voice whispered. "Now they will see you." The reflection began to move again, but Lena didn't. She backed into the corner, shaking, her phone still recording. The screen showed the reflection walking toward her even though she hadn't moved. "This isn't real," she repeated over and over. The reflection stopped right in front of the glass, placed its hand on the inside, and smiled that same stretched grin. Then it leaned forward and stepped out. The sound of breaking glass filled the room as the reflection solidified into a physical form, its eyes empty voids. It tilted its head, mimicking her trembling posture. "Who are you?" Lena whispered, barely breathing. The reflection smiled wider and said in her own voice, "You." Before she could scream, it lunged forward, and everything went black. The next morning, Lena's parents returned home to find her room empty. The mirror looked perfectly normal, except for 3 faint handprints pressed on the inside of the glass. Her phone was on the vanity table, camera still recording, the video ending at exactly 3:33 a.m. When police reviewed the footage, all they saw was Lena staring into the mirror, whispering to herself, "Don't look away," before smiling eerily at the camera. Her reflection, however, blinked half a second late every single time. Now, they say the mirror still sits in that house, covered by a white sheet. Locals whisper that sometimes, at exactly 3 a.m., the sheet moves on its own. And if you dare to lift it, you might see a reflection smiling back that isn't yours. If you ever find yourself awake at 3 a.m., don't look into the mirror. You never know who or what might be waiting on the other side. Subscribe to Mire Haven for more terrifying stories that make you question reality itself. And remember, some reflections are better left unseen.